Hi folks, Chris Voss here from the chrisvossshow.com. Coming here with the launch of a new podcast that I'll be doing. This one is called Abby's Pet Cancer Support Podcast. And let me talk about what we're doing here, why this is our first episode, and where we're going from here. One of the things I found is recently my dog named Abby, who's named after this podcast, had come down with cancer about 14 months ago. The diagnosis was devastating. I was helpless. I had no resources to handle the information that was given to me, and the vets were very, very limited on what resources they could give me or what sort of tools they could give me to survive what she'd been diagnosed with. What we're going to be doing in this podcast is attempting to give support to people providing hospice care for their animals, give guidance, give information to people on what they can do to empower themselves to deal with their pet's cancer, to have support for their pet's cancer, to deal with hospice care, their pet's cancer, to have information. Because there's nothing worse than when you come out of that doctor's office and they've given you very little resources or information to deal with the concept that you're in when they tell your dog or pet has cancer. And so hopefully with this podcast, we'll be bridging the gap. Please support us if you can. You'll find the links on the video. I believe we'll have a Patreon for the podcast and everything else. But the goal of our podcast is to help people who've recently been diagnosed with cancer for their pets, recently giving support to their dogs, pets with cancer, and giving them kind of that lifeline of information so they don't feel disempowered, so they don't feel helpless, because there's nothing worse than that feeling. So if you do watch this video, please share it, please like it, support as much as you can. What we're trying to do here is something that hopefully can help a lot of people. In the past 14 months of helping Abby and supporting her through her cancer, we saved a lot of dogs. Actually, quite a few dogs, saved a lot of people's sanity, and gave them support, gave them information, gave them tools that they could use that have kept many of their dogs alive that were in the same predicament that Abby was, where she was. The docs gave her 3 days, and somehow we turned that into 14 months. So we're going to start today with Abby's story, and I'm going to tell you what a synopsis of what we did and what we went through. And in future engagements, we'll talk to people, different vet outreaches that we want to take and do, vets that we'll have on the show, different people that are going through different issues, how they're coping with it, how they're managing it, and everything else. And basically a concept is to give people the empowerment out there so they don't feel they have to just go put their animals down right away, that they can buy time, that they can extend the length of their dog's life, that they can extend the care for them, that they can make the quality of life much better for their animals as they wane in their later years. So that's what we're going to try and do and attempt. And once again, please share, subscribe, give us all the support you can. This is being done out of the kindness and loving of our Abby's memory, my Siberian Husky dog. So let's start with Abby's story, since this is, of course, her podcast, Abby's Pet Cancer Support Podcast. In, I believe it was May of 2016, June 24th, May 24th, we took in notice that Abby was having some bleeding out of her rectal area, and it looked like it was fairly enlarged, and a concern for her was that maybe her anal ducts, the little ducts on the back that sometimes have to be expressed because they build up goo and it gets stuck in there, there had some buildup in it. So we went to the doctors, didn't think much of it. We were seeing some blood on the floor, which is a great concern for us. And went to the doctor, and he dropped a bomb. Abby at that time was about 14 or 15 years old. We don't have an exact birth date on Abby because she was born from some really awful garage breeders, And one of my friends had bought her for me for a Christmas gift, me unknowingly knowing where this came from, and giving me Abby with this host of issues with never knowing what her exact birth date was and never knowing if she had her shots and all that good stuff. But aside from that, Abby led a pretty great life, and we had a great life together for almost 16 years, roughly 16 years. So we had a good time. But 14 months ago, from her passing a month ago, well, not quite a month ago, she was diagnosed when we went in to see the vet for this anal sac expression with anal sac cancer. Anal sac cancer or anal sac tumor, which is the same thing. And it was like getting hit by a freight train. Abby had always lived a wonderful life. She'd always been incredibly healthy. She had been recently showing signs of some arthritis, but it was not that big of a deal. And it was just a kick in the head, kick in the teeth, take it any way you want. What I didn't realize at the time, and I'd been seeing Abby lean up and lose weight. I'd been kind of starting to see her ribs show up. I just wrote it off to old age and arthritis, and I didn't really think about it. She'd always been fed out of a common bowl that I feeds with my other Siberian Husky, and I'd never paid attention to how much they were eating daily. They just have an open bowl. They eat whatever they want. And so I had no idea that Abby had stopped eating for quite some time. And she was losing weight, and she was doing it because the food was making her probably sick, and she didn't want to poop either. So there's those two things. So when we met with the doctor took her in the back to look at her. And he, of course, did what you do with colons and anals. He stuck his finger in there and mentioned that there was a lot of polyps. And he expressed one of her anal sacs, and the other one he could not express because it was filled with a tumor. So he came back to us and said, "This is the situation. Your dog's not eating, which means it wants to go." That's usually the sign most people tell you with dogs that they're done because they have quit eating. And he said, anal sac cancer is not survivable. The cancer that she has on the inside of polyps of her area there is so huge that if we cut it out, even if we could find a doctor that would cut it out, the hole would be so big it would likely not heal. If we do cut off the cancer that's there, we will cut the nerve that regulates her being able to control her system and bowels, and she will need to live in a diaper. The process is we had two options. Take her home for 3 days, take a bunch of pictures, spend a lot of quality time, and bring her back for the last visit. Excuse me. The second option we had was to have the surgery, take out her behind pretty much, and have her live in a diaper and put her on chemotherapy, where every day we'd be going in getting chemotherapy shots. Doctor said she would live in a world of hell doing it that way. She might not heal. She could die from the infection. She could die from, of course, all the different fecal material that you have to deal with from that area, being in an open wound. And it would be miserable, and it would probably give her a maximum of 3 months of life. Over the course of this podcast, we'll talk about more detail what we did, but I don't want to do too much in our first podcast so that we have a whole lot to work with. So I'm going to brush over a lot of different stuff that we did and details and leave that for future podcasts, if you will. So please subscribe. That was the diagnosis he gave me. Abby had maybe 3 months to live at best, given her age. Younger dogs, of course, can survive the cancer, they said, and live on for maybe a year or two. But pretty much Abby lived with a death sentence of either 3 months or 3 days. And that was all he had for me. It was crushing. I don't think I can describe it. I'm sure you can get the impression, but it was crushing. We went from just, everything's great, we're having great days, and my dog's having a little issue, to we're at the end of the road. 15 years of the end of had come to an end. So I went home. just lost, discouraged, destroyed, nothing, and not feeling empowered, just feeling like a total victim. And it's the worst feeling in the world. And that's one of the reasons that I want to make this podcast, hopefully have it be successful enough to where people will share it, where people can get this information out there, where we can maybe change some lives and change some things so that people don't have to get the same results that I see every time someone gets these sort of diagnoses where they're just helpless. We want to give people tools so that they can be empowered to try some stuff. This is the thing I constantly talk to when I talk to owners whose dogs have been diagnosed with cancers and give them some of the tips and tricks that we use with Abby to go from 3 days to 14 months. Your dog has a death sentence. Your dog will die. What do you have to lose trying some stuff? What do you have to lose experimenting stuff? You don't. Your dog is already walking with a death sentence. Why not try something that might help? So basically what we did is, for the first 1 or 2 days, I cried. There was a lot of upsetness. There was a lot of processing of it, of course. And the doctor called me back and he said, maybe you should just meet with a specialist just to see. And I said, so what you're telling me is she's going to live beyond 3 days. You're just not sure when. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, so why, if Abby can live beyond 3 days, why am I putting Abby down 3 days when I can maybe try some stuff to make it work? He's like, well, you can do that. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that when I met you? I've been crushed for 24 hours, helpless, and you didn't give me enough information. I'm not saying vets are bad or anything like that, but I see this a lot. There's not a lot of information that they're given to really be empowered on what they can do. So let's share more of that here. So what I did was I looked around, I searched, I started Googling, I started educating myself on Abby's cancer. Education is empowerment. So I started empowering myself in my situation with Abby, where I was searching, reading. I looked up Facebook groups that help with cancer. I went into my Siberian Husky groups and I said, hey, who else has had a Siberian that's had anal cyst cancer? Who else has had that? What have you done? What are the pictures like? The outpouring and support was amazing. People share with me their stories, their pictures, their videos. Some of them were graphic and horrible when it came to the surgeries that had been done on their dogs, but they had survived them. So I started getting a little bit of hope. Okay, so there's stuff we can do, and maybe we can do stuff to improve the quality of Abby's life throughout this experience and carry her through hospice care. And that's when someone came to me and said, basically, Chris, what you're going into is hospice care. You're going to try and take care of your sick dog, and just like we would someone in a hospice care for a human. So this is what you have to do. And someone educated me too on hospice care, that there are good days and there are bad days. And hopefully you have more good days than bad, but you have to kind of get through the bad days. And what you have to do with hospice care is you have to take it one day at a time. And sometimes you have a really bad day and it really seems awful and it seems like the world's going to end and that's going to be the last day. Sometimes you get through it and the next day is better. Her body rebounds. So we'll get into some of that here. So one of the things I found within the first couple days was what people called the dog cancer diet or pet cancer diet. It's basically, there's a lot of different versions of it. Most of it's a keto-based diet. And a lot of it is based around the theory, which there's a lot of good data on that we'll share across the show and links and stuff. There's the theory that basically cancer loves sugar. Sugar feeds cancer. High fat doesn't feed cancer. Cancer won't eat it, but high fat the body loves to fight cancer. It helps empower the body. So I did a lot of study into this. Sardines being the highest fat, red beef being the second highest fat, and then going down into some of the different avenues. Turkey, chicken doesn't do very well because it's not high fat, and pork, of course, is kind of sugary. So the basic recommendation of what I could find out there was take sugar out of their diet, get the crap, shitty, over-the-counter food that's just manufactured garbage that you're buying from the pet store and put her on a raw meat diet. I tried putting Abby on sardines. She ate them for a couple days, but then wouldn't eat them anymore. So then we converted to the hamburger, the big rolled hamburger you see in the store. You buy it for like $10. It's 5 pounds. It's kind of probably not that hamburger that you'd eat, but it is edible. And it comes in those like 10-pound rolls, if you will. So I started feeding that to Abby. First couple days, she would eat it all raw. Then she wouldn't eat it unless it was cooked. So this is an important thing. Preferably, you want to give them a raw diet, but Abby wanted to cook. So I cook it, brown it a little bit for her, using the microwave because she doesn't really care how it's served to her. And then I would give it to her. One of the other things that we found that was points of success was I learned, this is really, really important. Cancer doesn't kill the animal. Cancer does not kill the animal. What the animal usually dies from is a failure of organs that the cancer has destroyed. Usually cancer is going to go after the kidneys and the liver, because if it can destroy those, the body can't fight back, of course, the body can't process, and the body will die. One of the things that was happening with Abby was Abby had an incredible amount of calcium in her blood. She was drinking like a fish, and the doctor identified that when he came in. He goes, "She drinking like a fish?" I'm like, "Yeah, the past couple of days she's been just drinking like everything." And he goes, "That's because what's happening is there's a high amount of calcium in her blood. And what the cancer is doing is attacking the pituitary gland, causing the pituitary gland to have way too much calcium in the blood. And the calcium in the blood is killing the liver and kidney." So what I learned afterwards in researching, Googling, searching the internet, was that basically this concept that cancer doesn't kill the animal. It's the loss of those organs that kill the animal. So what you have to do is you've got to protect those organs. You've got to save those organs. You've got to give the body the ability to fight the cancer. We get cancer all the time, actually. Most people don't realize it in very small cases. But our body actually shuts it down and kills it until sometimes we just get older and our body just won't do it anymore. So the body has the ability to fight, to do what it can, but you have to give it the tools. So what I basically learned was we need to give her 3 things. And this is what we added to Abby's diet. We just pour it right into the meat fat. And she got the meat and the fat that would coagulate out of the cooked thing. The fat is pretty much the most important part. So the meat rolls that we would get also, I should mention, had about 27% fat to them. 27%. So they're massive fat. So what we do is we put 3 different pills. We just break them open, pour it in, let it soak into the fat. Bada bing, bada boom. We use turmeric. Turmeric, a lot of people will say that they'll reduce cancer, that they'll reduce cysts. Take that for what you want. It does reduce inflammation, which is important for your dog if they have cancer. They have inflammation. It will help with that. We gave her that for the 14 months, and it helped immensely. Dandelion root. We gave her dandelion. For some reason, a lot of people really swear by dandelion as being great for cancer. Didn't have anything to lose. She had a death sentence, so we gave her dandelion root. Third thing we gave her was milk thistle. This is really important because the milk thistle helps the liver and kidneys regenerate and helps salvage them. So there's our salvo that we're going after to help keep those organs alive so they can put up a fight so that Abby can live. So what we did is we started on this diet. Right away, Abby would eat like all the food. Sometimes I'd have to make a second helping for it, and I'd give Abby as much food as she wanted. What I found in my theory, you can call it what you will, but my theory and what I found is her body had stopped eating the crap food, the food filled with sugar and garbage and elements that weren't helping her fight the cancer. And I believe, this is my theory, that her body was saying that food is feeding my cancer. That food is feeding my cancer, and I'm not going to eat anymore because it's a suicide run. And as soon as we gave her the high fat, high meat body, or high meat food, her body went, this is what I need. This is what I need to fight that cancer. And so that's what we did. And right away she started eating. She started putting on pounds. She went up, I believe it was 5 to 7 pounds. And suddenly we went from a situation of, okay, she's dying, we've got 3 days, to how much time do we really have? The other thing we discovered was what was happening was, since we weren't treating Abby with her issues, we weren't keeping her clean back there, we weren't putting Neosporin back in there, we weren't taking care of her with pain pills where she'd be in pain back there. She was going back there and chewing back there. So the chewing was causing all the blood. So what we had to do was get her on the right pain pills so that she wouldn't be in pain, get her regulated with tramadol, and I believe there was something else we were taking for gabapentin we were taking to deal with the infection, because it's an open wound with the cancer cyst back there. And so we were giving her that. So once we started giving her that, the bleeding stopped. That was going all throughout my house. The bleeding stopped because she wasn't chewing on it. It really wasn't the cancer that was leaking and bleeding, it was her chewing on it. And that's a very important thing that we needed to learn. No one taught me this. No, the vet didn't sit down and go, hey, this is how this works, etc., etc. I had to figure all this out on my own. And this is why we're doing this with the podcast, is so that you can figure that out as well. So this started empowering us. I started going, okay, what can we do? What can I learn on how to give Abby hospice care? How can I keep her alive and make her quality of life as best as I possibly can for a long time? So it went into a mode of hospice care where it was day to day. Now, I am very lucky. I am able to work from home. I'm able to stay home 24/7. I'm not married. I don't have any kids, so I can devote my full time to my dog. It may be hard for a lot of people to do what I did, but I do believe that many people can still buy time. They can still provide hospice care, even though they're not around all the time. They've just got to work the system of support, make sure the dogs are getting their medication and everything else. Now, keep in mind, we never went in for the chemo and the giant hole that we'd have to cut out. I knew Abby wasn't going to live with that sort of pain and anguish. I knew just getting her to wear a diaper, whether she had to or not, would have been a full-time 24-hour nightmare. She would have chewed it, ripped it off. She's a Siberian Husky. It would have made her life a living hell. The chemotherapy, going into the vet every day that she hated to go anytime she went, was just a torture chamber. I mean, it would not have been fun, and she probably would have definitely fell down and died fairly quickly. And then even then, we didn't have the information about, the meat and the sugar and everything else. So what ensued after that was pretty much a journey where every day for 14 months, we just tried to get through today. And the premise is that every day is a brick of gold, and we're going to appreciate every day, be thankful for every day, and try and get through it. And fortunately, over 14 months, most days were good days. Biggest trick I had to learn one of the tricks I had to learn was you can't be chasing pain. You've got to stay ahead of pain. You've got to make sure you give him the pills on time. And I realized that I had to start being a nurse. I had to start thinking like a nurse in a hospital, where the patient has to get their pain pills on a sequential time so they don't fall out of their pills and coverage into pain. So you've got to do that. And it really became a learned experience, because if I got off the pill schedule, Abby would chew her cyst, and then we'd have blood all over the floors, and then she'd be in pain, and it would be a mess, and it would be harder for the pain pills to catch up and do what we call chasing pain. So my job was to become head nurse and make sure that all this stuff would fall into play. We take care of Abby's quality of life, she'd get her pain pills on time, and everything else. So that's what we did, and it was up and down, as you can imagine, because my life is different than hers. Sometimes she sleeps during the day, sometimes she's awake during the day, and so pretty much 24/7 was hospice care for Abby. If she was up in the middle of the night, I had to get up, go see what she was doing. We put cameras on her. We put notifications on doors and motion sensors around her area. I have a 2-story home, so that I could know when she was up and moving around. And it worked for a long time. For a long time, it seemed like we seized the place where she was with her cancer, and it didn't seem to be growing much. And then sometimes there'd just be little leaps in the size of the anal cyst on the back of her. But she kept pooping, she kept peeing, she kept playing and having fun. She kept being fairly active, although you could tell that sometimes she was uncomfortable. She wasn't on her pain pills. And she kept eating. The trick here, too, is I gave Abby as much as she wanted. Because what I found on my theory is that whatever her body needs to fight the cancer, this high-fat diet, give it to her. And give her body as much as it needs to feel like what it needs to do is to fight that cancer. And so that's what we did. If she wanted second helpings, she got second helpings. We'd overfeed her to the point that I'd have to take whatever was left over, either give it to my other dog or put it in the fridge for the next round. And Abby led a pretty decent life. Throughout 14 months, we'd have bad days. We had days where either the pills hadn't taken, or maybe she'd fallen behind, or maybe I needed to increase the pills. There was times where we needed to change the arthritis medicine. At one point, I thought the cyst was getting so bad, it was making it so that she couldn't walk, and it was interfering with her walking. Turns out, when I went into the doctor to talk about putting her down, he said, look, no, that's the arthritis part. She's old, she's got arthritis, so we need to address that. So you can really get a lot of false signals from your dog when they're going through this pet cancer thing. And you've got to really be careful, because I could see myself so quickly and easily through this whole process just knee-jerking to, okay, we got to put her down. This is really bad. And in the meantime, we just had to educate ourselves. We had to inform ourselves, learn, empower ourselves, and get data and information that was out there and crowdfunded, in many cases, to give Abby the best. In one case, the arthritis medicine that we had just really stopped working, and it got really bad with her crouching and being able to stand. And I was like, okay, this is it. I think that was in January. And I said, well, we're just going to have to put Abby down because she can't walk, and this is really awful. Went to the doctor, and he said, no, this isn't the cancer. This is the arthritis. So what we're going to do is change the medicine. We change the medicine. Boom. Abby goes back to normal, or semi-normal, if you will. So what ensued was 14 months of everything. It was incredibly hard. It was incredibly difficult. It was emotionally rendering. It was tough. And it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But what I could not do was live with myself if I knew that I gave up on Abby too early or too quick. I could not live with myself if I quit on Abby, if I put her down because it was just too hard for me. And as long as I could look into those eyes and that she was still willing to put up a fight, that she was still there, and she was still trying, I was willing to support her in there. I got a lot of different information from a lot of different people, and of course, a lot of them had good intentions. But I had people telling me that keeping her alive was the worst. When I should put her down because she wasn't in her prime. People telling me that I should put her down because she was in some pain. Well, newsflash: most of the people on the planet live with pain almost daily, or live in some sort of pain on a non-daily basis. If you get a headache, do I need to put you down and put you to sleep because you're in pain? You're in pain. We should kill you. No, that's not the right theory to use for animals. So I had to challenge a lot of this stuff because people were like, well, whatever. And the doc's like, well, as long as she's still eating, she's probably going to be fine. So just keep through it. So that's what we did. We kept feeding her the diet. Now, the one thing about this raw, high-fat meat diet, the thing about the high-fat meat diet, is that basically what you're doing is you're giving them what they would eat in the wild. If you understand what these dogs originally did in the wild, is they lived off of high-fat raw meat. They go kill a animal, usually a red-blooded meat animal. They kill that animal, and then once they did, they would eat it. Now, they didn't, worry about whatever. Like, I've had people tell me, they're like, well, I make sure that my dog eats lots of grain. Dogs didn't eat grain in the wild. They ate fucking red meat. They ate high-fat red meat. That's what they did. So why aren't you feeding your dog high-fat red meat? So what we did is went on this journey with her and put her on this diet. And really, if you think about the logic of why that makes sense, you're basically taking your dog off of this crappy, cancerous, fake bullshit food that we manufacture and that actually has caused a lot of us to have incredible rates of cancer, and animals now suddenly have high rates of cancer. And it's all coming from this crab food that we're feeding our animals. And so it's very important that we assess what that's about and identify why it's a problem for our animals, why they're dying, why they're malnutritioned, and why they're getting cancer. So that's the importance of this diet and why it's important. And if you search around, there's a lot of people who extended their dog's life with this diet. We'll talk some more about what it is, have some features of it specifically. But the basic summits of it, it was high-fat rolled hamburger with dandelion root, turmeric, and milk thistle. Now, if you're watching this, please share this video. If you have a friend who gets cancer, feel free to refer them to me. I will freely and gladly help anyone in this situation. Or please share this video or share this information with them yourself. Hey, I heard about this. This is what you can do. There's nothing worse than when your friends come home with that bomb that gets dropped by the vet, and 9 times out of 10, the vet doesn't give them a lot of resources. The vet doesn't have a lot of resources to give them. The vet usually doesn't recommend holistic sort of stuff like this. So there's that. Anyway, after 14 months, we saw some just incredible growth in the tumor, and it got bigger and bigger, and we kept checking with the doctor, and doctor's long as she's eating, pooping, peeing, everything's working fine, she's eating really strong, just keep right on trucking. It finally reached in the later stages, it took a big jump, and of course we were having problems with keeping the wound clean because it was getting to the point where it was large enough that her tail was rubbing against it. And then the arthritis got really, 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 really bad. And it started to become almost a race to see which would kill her faster, the cancer or the arthritis. She was having trouble standing, etc., etc. In the end, in the last week and a half that we had Abby, we kind of totally hit the wall. Abby was still eating strong, peeing and pooping, but the problem was she was bleeding profusely from the cyst. When she would lay on the floor, the cyst was big enough that side would hit the floor and stick, which is pretty awful. And then when she'd get up, it would rip, bleed, and then I'd have a whole floor of blood for the last few days that we had Abby. What also happened is the arthritis got so bad, Abby couldn't get off the tile floor. She would slip and slide around. We'd have to put a blanket under her or a towel from wherever she laid down and help her up, pick her up basically, which wasn't too big a deal, but it had gotten to the point where she could not move around. And at night, over the last few days that Abby was alive, since she couldn't get up and I was asleep, she had slithered across the floor, very sadly, dragging blood across the floor and everything else. When it became apparent that this was the hospice care point where there were no good days left and we were just having a series of bad days, you could see in Abby's eyes, and especially the last day, that she was done. She was haggard, she was beaten. I'm doing this for Abby, so I'll try and hold it together. Anyway, I think you get the idea. It became apparent that we were done. She couldn't walk anymore. She was starting to fall over. Her one hip was giving out, and she was just listing over and hitting the floor, which of course became dangerous as well for her. So we took her into the doctor and said, I think we're at the end. Do you have any other options that you can do? There might have been a case where we could have given her a higher dosage of arthritis medicine because keep in mind, she was still eating her food. She was still actually moving around, wanting to go outside. She was still trying to play with our other dog. But the biggest problem is even like her laying down in her bed or anywhere on the floor, this cyst was just constantly turning to blood. She was bleeding down the backside into her fur. It was getting into her tail, which would then subsequently rub. And I mean, the whole thing was just becoming awful and not fun for her in any way, shape, or form. It really didn't matter what sort of pain pills we keep in Abby, because the blood loss on a daily basis the last few days had to be so much. I'm sure it wasn't making her feel good. So in meeting with the doctor, he took a look, of course, of where we're at, and he said, "Yeah, I think we're at the point where we're done, and Abby's done." So we went through the process, of course, of making that her last visit to the vet, which is very tragic. I'm sure you can imagine what I've been through in the past. I think in about 5 days it will be a month. So it's taken a lot to come around to finally do this video and launch this podcast. But to me, I feel it's very important. We've started I believe it's a GoFundMe, or You're Caring. We have 2 sites that are helping us build a foundation for Abby and, of course, support for this podcast. So I'm hoping that those of you that are out there listening will either support that either by financial means or by please sharing this message, or anytime you come across somebody who has a pet cancer diagnosis or hospice care support needed, you'll give them the information on this or share the information you learn here, so that we can take what we learned through and we suffered through with Abby for 14 months, and we can expedite that to empower, educate, inform not only other vets and outreach that we want to do with the foundation and the podcast. We're going to have vets on the show here, but also to educate private owners so that they don't feel that huge insecurity of having nothing to go on when they get their diagnosis. So that's what we did. In the process we used, we'll get into some of the details, some of the days we had, some of the different things, the questions that you may have. And of course, if you have some, please put them below this video and let us know how we can help you and how we can do it. During these 14 months, I've been championing this on Facebook, championing Abby's journey through her final experience, and sharing it with a lot of people. And one of the things that I've been very honored to be able to do is take what we learned with Abby and share it with other owners. There's been about, I think, 5 or 6 different people that I've counseled and helped. 2 of them, their dogs are still alive today because of the cancer diet and what they approved. Now, I should probably throw a disclaimer in here somewhere. I'm not a doctor. What I'm telling you may or may not save your dog. There's no guarantees to anything I'm telling you in any way, shape, or form. And once again, I am not a doctor. You should take the advice that I'm giving you as speculative at best. I mean, for all I know, what we did with Abby will never work on any other dog. I don't think that's true, because we actually copied that from a ton of dogs and dog owners on the internet. But take that for what you will for disclaimer. I don't know if what I'm going to educate you here will help you with your dog. And so take this for, I suppose legally you could say, the case of entertainment. But if your dog has a death sentence and is already going to die, maybe there's something you can take and try. So 14 months we got out of Abby. I think it came about 3 days short of 14 months. And she originally was only given 3 days to live. Think about what that means. That's 14 months I got with Abby. 14 months. Every day was a brick of gold, being able to spend one more day with my dog, to have a semi-normal life, to enjoy her company for one day more. Now, if I would have just given up, if I would have just quit, if I would have just rolled over with the lack of information the vet had given me, I would not have gotten the 14 months out of Abby's life. I would not have done her justice in my mind. I'm not going to judge other people and what the choices they make. That's up to you. But I got just 14 months of bricks of gold in time that I got to spend with her. And I wouldn't trade those 14 months for probably any 14 months in my life. Because my dog's real important to me. Let's put it that way. I don't have kids, I don't have a wife. I have 2 dogs that I think of as my children. So it's very important to me. And frankly, this was losing my child in my mind experience and how I think about my animals. And I know a lot of people have that same sort of feeling. So that's our journey that we did. We'll get into some more details of it, some of the other things that we did, some of the techniques that we used, some of the paradigms that we had when it came to providing hospice care, being a good nurse, Nurse Chris, and everything else. We're going to try some different things. We want to do outreach to vets. Hopefully with building a charity or foundation, we can make it so we can have an outreach program to educate vets on what we did and giving more people options, even if they're holistic, than just, well, bring your dog back in 3 days and we'll put him down. There was so much more that we were able to do with Abby that the docs didn't have. And keep in mind, originally in the story, they said that if we did the surgery, if we put her on chemo, put her through the torture chamber of hell every day, going in for shots for chemo, she might maybe last 3 months. We didn't do any of that. Abby lasted 14 months. She had a death sentence. I figured, what do we have to lose? We got 14 months instead of 3 days. And that's pretty darn awesome. And it wasn't a miracle. It wasn't something some invisible vapor in the sky did. It was something I did. And it was something Abby did. And the 2 of us working together, we put up a fight for her life. And we made her little lottery ticket in getting a life in this world last as long as she possibly could and get her the most max out of it. And I don't think there's anything better I could have done for her. So, once again, thank you for watching this video, Abby's Pet Cancer Support Podcast. We hope to, of course, have a group on Facebook. You can join that as well. You can hopefully support us on some of our different channels, whether they're the GoFundMe or the Your Caring sites or the Patreon. If you would support us so we can build this out and I can give the amount of time that I need to give to this out of my current work so that we can share this information freely. I don't want to charge for this information. I've had people call me up and say, my friend said that you're great with this and you know how to beat this. How much does it cost? I actually had people that were trying to sell me cancer support programs when Abby got cancer. I'm not looking to charge anybody for this or make money. I would like to have some of the costs of what it's going to take to maintain the website, maintain the podcast, take time out of my schedule to do it, taken care of, be able to give us things where we could print information brochures that we can send out to vet clinics, different things where we can have people on. We're building out a site right now that is going, and we'll have some more details on that, but we'll have a website that we'll be able to support with information, tools, and everything else so that people don't have the crippling non-empowerment of non-education of being able to blindly go, my dog has cancer, holy hell, what do I do now? And they can use these tools that I have and tools that we'll talk to with other vets as to stuff and advice and support that they can use. Some of you who may be supporting a dog through hospice care right now, hopefully they'll turn to this podcast to help keep your hopes up, to help keep your those bad days, get some support for those, and be able to have a voice of reason and stability to get you through those times. Because I didn't have them, and I think it's real important that something like this is created. My hope is that what will happen with this, and the other reason I'm doing this is it does help keep Abby's name, her life, her memory, her suffrage, and what we learned from it alive. So, by doing this, it serves what she did in her life and makes her memory last forever, makes her life essence last forever, and it helps give it freely to the world. So that's our podcast. If you have any questions, put them down below. Support us as much as you can as we roll out this product. We've got a lot of building of websites and different things that we have to do. We've even got some promotional stuff that we're working on where we can have campaigns to support raising money and funds to help stuff. Hopefully with the foundation we can have enough money where it can take in, help people with their cancer treatments, help people with their vet funds and all that good stuff, help give support to people who are in the situation that we were with Abby, who maybe can't financially go through the same sort of mechanisms I did. So there you have it. Please, if you watch this video all the way through, I thank you very much. Abby, if she were here, I'm sure that somewhere in my heart or the energy of the universe, she thanks you. And please, if you know somebody, share this video with them, share this information with them, help empower them if they're in those moments of madness and helplessness when they get this diagnosis of cancer, and say, I know some information and I know someone who might be able to help you. And if you do know people, I will freely talk to them, email with them, message with them, give them my advice as much as I can, as freely as I can, to help them through these moments. But you can also do that work to yourself by sharing and caring. Anyway, thank you for tuning in once again. Please subscribe to our podcast, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next podcast, where we're hoping to have a veterinarian, one of the kind of social veterinarians that are out there. There's a lot of great YouTube veterinarians and stuff, vets that are doing YouTube productions. And we're going to talk to them about some of what we learned, so what they learned, so what they know, and different information that can help you, support you through this. Be blessed. Thanks for tuning in.